Hi, my name is Callie, and this is part 3 of a multi-part video series documenting my family's trip around Iceland in April of 2023. Continue watching as we visit an iconic church in Reykjavik, Iceland, and we learn some history of Iceland from the National Museum of Iceland. So we started off our day with some average hotel breakfast, and then we headed on to our first stop, which was the Hallgrimskirkja church. This is an iconic church in Reykjavik and can be seen from a lot of different areas around the city and sits on top of the main hill in the city. But before I talk more about the church itself, I wanted to highlight this statue sitting outside the church of Leif Erikson. And I wanted to show some fun facts about Leif Erikson. He was the first European to land in North America nearly 500 years before Christopher Columbus. And the statue itself was gifted to Iceland from the US in 1930 to commemorate the 1,000-year anniversary of the Iceland Parliament. And the church was actually built after the statue was placed. This statue has been here since 1932, and the construction on Hallgrimskirkja began in 1942. So we walked around the church for a little bit, but we quickly realized we were there a little too early as there was a private church service being held for members of the church, and the public wasn't allowed to go in for about an hour or so. So we decided to kill some time and go to a nearby coffee shop to get some coffee and a little bit more breakfast while we waited. And finally, when our hour wait was up, we headed back to the church, and I went inside and decided to go up into the top of the steeple. So for about $8, you can go to the top. It's about 8 or 9 floors up in an elevator ride. You can kind of walk around the bells. And just see a pretty much 360 view of Reykjavik. And honestly, this is one of the best views you can get of Reykjavik, so if you really want to get the full city view, go to the top of this church's steeple. They do have bells that ring every 15 minutes, and just be aware they are very loud when they go off, and they caught me a bit off guard when I was up there. So after I finished taking my pictures and videos of the view and just taking it in, I decided to head back down and join my mom and grandpa so that we could go into the chapel. So this church itself is pretty interesting in an architecture perspective. It started construction, like I said, in 1942, and it was actually constructed in 3 different parts, and it wasn't fully completed until about 1987. At the time of construction, the building was criticized as being too old-fashioned and having too many different blends of architectural style. And it was also intended to be a little bit shorter than what it was, but the leaders of the Church of Iceland wanted a larger spire in order to outshine the local Landeskotts Church, which was the cathedral of Catholic Church in Iceland at the time. To me, the main center point of this church is actually not the front-facing part like it normally would be in a church, but what's behind you after you walk into the church, which is the massive large pipe organ system that they have in the church. And this actually isn't the first one they built. They built one before this in about 1946 when part of the church was constructed, and they decided it wasn't big enough, so they commissioned another organ designer to build an even bigger one. But in general, it's really cool just to walk around and see the inside of the church. It's free to enter the chapel area, so feel free to enter and take pictures and videos of it on the inside whenever there's not a church service happening for church members. After we finished up at the church, we decided to head to a museum in Reykjavik called the National Museum of Iceland. This is a great museum to really get a feel of the overall general history of Iceland itself, starting with artifacts from when it was founded by Vikings in the very beginning, all the way to present time day, Shows a lot of different aspects of religious artifacts and how religion evolved in Iceland over the years, as well as kind of how settlers spread throughout the country, including how their fashion evolved, technology, transportation, things like that. So a really great way to get an idea of how Iceland's history has evolved and grown and how it's become the country it is today. So if you're really into history and things like that, highly recommend this museum. It took us about 2 hours to go through it. It's got about 2 floors to it, and it costs about $20 per person to enter the museum. So once we were finished at the museum, we decided to grab some dinner, and we went to a very famous and popular seafood restaurant called the Sea Baron. And this restaurant is known for their lobster soup, so of course we had to get that and try it, and it was very delicious. Highly recommend visiting if you're ever in Reykjavik. And then from there, we just walked around Reykjavik some more in the area of our hotel. I also want to take this time to highlight some of the artwork and street art that's in Reykjavik. I didn't realize how many different street murals and stuff they would have. This was just a few of them that we came across. There was so many more that we saw along our walks and stuff throughout the city through the whole week. So really cool street art, really encouraged there, and it was really cool to see that. And then I ended up making a stop at this record store, and I found some Icelandic music records that I ended up buying and bringing back with me, so that was cool. And then we finished up our day on the coast. We drove over to a lookout that's just right by Reykjavik, and we kind of walked around and just took in the view of the inlet here, and it was very cool. This was our itinerary for day 3, all the things we went and saw and the places we ate. And stay tuned for the next parts and the rest of our trip, and I hope you enjoyed. My Google isn't half Icelandic and I don't know how to fix it or what any of this says except for the reviews.
Very good.